Pandi here of Pandi's Hair Candy and More. If this is your first time stopping by my channel, welcome and thank you so much for being here. If you are a returning subscriber, you already know what it is. Thank you so much for coming back and kicking it with your girl. Okay? You guys, I am just getting back to my basics of what brought me here on YouTube. And one of those things was my love for trending TV shows. I love to just watch, especially when there are new premieres, and kind of give my commentary, my perspective on them. Just come to you guys and kind of see what your thoughts are, see if you've checked out the show, and I like to compare. So, you guys, the show that I'm going to be covering on tonight, it is a brand new show on the Oprah Winfrey Network. It is called Cherish the Day. It is produced and written by Ava DuVernay. Um, and this is going to be season 1, episode 1. Okay? So, as you all can see in my description box, it is going to be basically a little mini series that spans over the course of several episodes. However, it is all circled around one day, which is the Cherish the Day. All right? So, this episode basically begins with a hot, steamy love scene between a man and a woman. It's very erotic. You can't quite make out who exactly it is, though. And as it goes on, it becomes quite clear that we have two sets of couples here. And you can kind of tell because there's like a lighter complected woman with a dark skinned man, and then there's like a darker man with a lighter woman, which is kind of the opposite of the two star characters, Evan and Gently. I believe it's Evan Fisher and Gently James. Okay. Now, we then see both Gently and Evan leaving from what appears to be two separate random sexual encounters. Okay. We see Gently James getting an Uber and pulling off. And then we see Evan hopping in his brand new Tesla and driving off. Okay. Now, the next scene we see the iconic Cicely Tyson, whose character in the show is Miss Luma Langston. She's sitting down at a breakfast table, and it appears that Miss Gently James is some sort of caregiver, or she's in some sort of a caregiver capacity. Miss Luma is like known in the community. Apparently, she's some sort of a popular actress, very well known in the community. Okay, so she's preparing her breakfast, coffee or tea, whatever it is, may have you. And they then flash to Evan, who we see walking with his niece, who is a younger girl. He's obviously somewhat of a positive male role model or male influence in the young lady's life. We next see Evan taking the young lady, the niece, to the library, like a public library. Now, as she's sitting in on what appears to be some sort of an ancient Egyptian reading there in the library, Evan then slips off into the library to basically go do his own thing. He's like wandering around just to kill time while the niece is there doing whatever she's doing. Okay. He eventually makes his way up to the checkout desk where a long line is backed up by none other than Miss Gently James, who is clearly having a full blown back and forth with the clerk over a late fee that she's basically trying to talk her way out of hand to a very unimpressed and unbothered librarian. It is at that moment that a very frustrated Evan steps to the front of the line and offers to pay the fine for Miss Gently. Now, mind you, this is for a book that is 1 year past due and a $207 fine. Okay? So, when he mentions the fact that he has heard of Miss Luma, because of course the lady was returning the book for Miss Luma, and the librarian was, saying Miss Luma does this all the time, blah, 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 blah. He steps in. He says, she asks him, well, do you know her? And he's like, well, I don't know her, but I've heard of her through my grandfather. And in that moment, they have a moment. They kind of gaze into each other's eyes, and the library is looking like, will y'all get a room already. She's just kind of like rolling her eyes. And Miss Gently's like, I am going to be planted here. I'm not going to move from this spot until you do what's right, sister. She's basically telling her, I'm not going to move. I don't care about that line, and I'm not paying you. Okay. The librarian reluctantly gives her a waiver, and she verbally states out loud, this $207 fine I am going to reluctantly waive this one time for Miss Luma Langston as well as her caregiver, Miss Gently James, citywide. So basically, she was like, don't ever ask for it again. It ain't happening. Okay. Now, next we see Gently arrive back at the house. She gets off of what looks like to be a public transit bus there in LA. And Miss Luma is sitting chilling on the porch. It's a nice sunny day. And she basically didn't think Gently would be able to check out the books or check out more books for her or even, get out of there without paying the fine. So she's very impressed by Miss Gently. And she tells her, I didn't think he was going to be able to pull it off. And they kind of laugh about it. Miss Luma begins to share her love of books, Gently tells her about her chance meeting with the man at the counter who offered to pay the fine, but that she turned him down. Miss Luma's looking at her like, baby, are you crazy? She tells her you should have let him pay. Next, we see Evan and his niece arrive at some sort of an office building. It's apparently his place of employment. Okay. He then goes into his office, and as he sits down at his desk, he begins to play back the events of the day. He's like sitting at his desk, he's reminiscing over the chance encounter at the library with the young lady. Okay, just then, as he's reminiscing, he remembers that the librarian called out her name, Gently James. So, what does he do? He sits down, he pulls out his cell phone, and he starts searching for her on social media. He finds her, he kind of smiles to himself, and he hits her DM. Okay. Um, he does that. The librarian called her by her name. Yep, I got that. Now, back at Miss Luma's house, Gently is working, basically doing her living caregiver gig, when she gets pleasantly surprised by a DM from Evan. Well, naturally, she finds it quite cute that he's reaching out, and she gets all giddy, so much so that she decides to share his profile pics with Miss Luma. Miss Luma then begins to drop gems of wisdom on her, telling her that although Evan is handsome, he's simply not her type. Um, Gently is a bit taken back by Miss Luma's comments, and she's like, "Well, what's my type, Miss Luma?" And Miss Luma tells her, "Big and dumb." They kind of laugh about it. Miss Luma tells her there's nothing wrong with that type, and that truth be told, she's enjoyed many of that type herself over the years. But baby, this man right here, that ain't him, and he's not that type of man. So they discuss his employment and his profile pics on the social media site. And Miss Luma also explains to her that she has a problem with getting and keeping a good man. For whatever reason, they can't seem to hold her attention for long enough before she's done and kind of tosses them to the side. Next, we see Evan take his niece back home to his sister's, where it's clear that her and her husband, Nick, don't really have the greatest marriage. At that moment, when he pulls up to drop the niece off, the sister invites him to stay for lunch, and his DM pings. He looks at his phone, and it's a DM from Gently, basically asking him to link up. So he declines on staying there at the sister's house. They meet up at a local barbecue restaurant to have some lunch. Now, keep in mind, y'all, that this is all over the course of one day. So this is basically like their first date, if you will. They have conversation and things are going really well and they're getting to know one another. They then hop in his Tesla. They're leaving, they're driving from the restaurant, and they just continue talking more about work. He shares what his future plans are to go into business for himself eventually. And she shares pretty much that she's a free spirit. She then asks him to drop her off in the hood. And at that moment, there's a kid running down the street, not really a kid, but like a young adult, and he spotted her and he's kind of running alongside the car, gently, gently. So she's like, "You mind pulling over?" He's kind of like a neighborhood kid, almost like a family member to her. He basically is asking for a ride. He's got all these bags and he's harping about how important recycling is. Now, he literally never acknowledges Evan, yet, mind you, this is his Tesla. He driving, she in the passenger seat, but he asking her for a ride. Okay, so Evan gives the boy a ride. He's talking their ear off about recycling. They then arrive at her family's crib, where Evan is then introduced to her father and her uncle. The uncle greets him with his can of beer. They're clearly in the hood, gives him the nod, look over, and was like, "What's that you claim?" So they straight hood, okay? And she's like, "Pipe down, pipe down." And the dad, the dad and the uncle are looking like, this ain't gonna never work because he's too clean cut for her. But they don't say anything. It's just like an unknown they give each other. Now, she then tells Evan that she needs to run an errand. The errand is that she needs to run and pick up a used refrigerator for Miss Luma. He says, "I can give you a ride." She's like, "No, I need a flatbed." So she gets the keys to the little old school El Camino sitting out in the yard from the daddy in. So they hop in the Elko, and he's looking back as they walk to the Elko like, "I really don't want to leave my Tesla in this neighborhood." And Ben senses his hesitation about leaving his car, and he's like, "Don't even trip. I got you. Your car's going to be good." Okay? So they then hop in the old school El Camino. They head to Carson, which is another city in LA. This is where they're going to go get the refrigerator. They have some more small talk in the car. He's talking and sharing about where he went to college. And she explains that, he asks her, "Well, where'd you attend school?" She's like, "I didn't. Right after high school, I graduated and I got a one-way ticket right out of high school to Europe." He's kind of looking like, wow. But at the same time, he's impressed because, he shares with her that her social media pictures clearly show that she's well traveled and she's been a lot of great places and she's done a lot of great things. However, he also takes mental note that they come from two different worlds. He's from the South Bay area, she's straight from the hood in LA. Now, when they arrive at their destination, which looks kind of like Sanford and Sons, like a junkyard type of deal, the appliance store has a sign posted stating that they're going to be closed for 1 hour, like they must have took a lunch break or whatever. So they're left to burn an hour in Carson. So they end up at some sort of like sports bar slash arcade. When they get in there, they're just having fun. And I think they get carried away with the time because they're like playing video games, shooting pool, throwing darts. They're just kicking it. They're having a relaxed, fun, unofficial date. Okay. And at that time, they actually share a kiss. And I think they bond in the moment. They then eat in the back of the Elko. They talk some more, and they're literally just learning one another. Now, in that conversation, Evan asked her about her high school years. She shares that she was lucky if she made it to class 2 days a week. Evan is like, whoa, he's a bit taken back. He asked her where was her parents, which most people would ask, okay? She then gets defensive with him and asks, what's that supposed to mean? She then proceeds to tell him that her dad died in the streets when she was 9 years old, and that Ben, the gentleman that he was introduced to back in the hood, who said he was going to be watching a Tesla, has been nothing but good to her. He then asks, well, what about your mama? She's still on defense. So much so, she never even responds to that question about the mom. She then drops and changes the subject, and she tells him that Ben changed his whole life for her, even took a job. He apologizes and tells her that he's not judging. He's just trying to, get to know her better. And she gets pissy and says, that sounds like you're judging me. She then catches an attitude and changes the subject, suggesting that they head back to the appliance store. She basically leaves him hanging by hopping out of the back of the El Camino and back into the driver's seat. Okay. When they arrive back at the appliance store, because all this time done lapsed, it's dark outside. When the lady comes to let them in to take a look at the refrigerator, he pulls out a tape measure and really gets irritated because the fridge is like an inch off. It won't fit. And he's like, well, can't you move things around? She's like, no, it's a wall. You can't just move a wall. And so he's like, well, it's no big deal. He offers to pay for a new refrigerator from a real appliance store, customized and measured. And she gets an attitude with him and start kind of like snapping off and talking crazy to him, telling him that's your problem. You're used to just throwing money at a situation. And in that moment, finally, I was so glad he checked her monkey tail right there. He was like, basically, you got me twisted. What you ain't gonna do is talk crazy to me. And she's like, what I will do and am gonna do is talk crazy to whoever and however I want to. Okay. He's like, no, you can't just talk to people like any old kind of way. She then goes into this rant about not being controlled by him. So clearly she has some control issues. She's not very trusting, which is probably why she's single. And it just shows us kind of the direction of where the show is going to go from here. So she went into that rant. She then tells him to get in or get left. And he basically tells her, deuces, you got me twisted. So in that moment, Miss Gently does leave, and he's forced to then get on his phone and get an Uber all the way back to LA to get his Tesla. Now, by the time he makes it back there to the crib in the hood, it's still dark outside. It's late, but the car is there, it's intact, everything is still fine. Um, he gives it a second guess, like he's getting ready to go get in the car, but then he stops for a moment and he hesitates, like he's about to go actually walk into the door or up to the door to go basically, try to work things out with her. Like maybe this got off to a wrong start. Maybe we can patch things up. But he decides against it. And also, he gives a look. He stands there. You can see through the sheer curtains. Miss Gently is standing there looking out at him. She's also looking like, I know the right thing to do would be to go out there and make this right. But the stubbornness inside of her won't allow her to do it. So that, y'all, is where they left us. That is season 1, episode 1 of Where Cherish the Night has began. That was the end of season 1, episode 1, titled Genesis. If you guys have seen the show, let me know what your thoughts are. So far, I like it. I think it's going to do well. It had just enough suspense, just enough drama, just enough romance. Um, Great acting. You got some superstars in it and some newcomers. So I'm looking forward to staying up to date with this. I hope you guys will definitely stay with me as I carry you along on this journey. And again, I'm Pandi of Pandi's Hair Candy and More, and I thank you so much. If you enjoyed this review, please take a moment to smash or blow on that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. It doesn't cost you anything. For the most part, I talk about hair, both wigs, weaves, natural hair care, but I also give my perspective on trending TV shows. All right, until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.